Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the first of these virtual showcases. We'll have a couple of them throughout the AAO through our booth here, and we will also be posting the links to get into them on our Facebook page and our homepage on our website. We're going to start with a little introduction to JCO with our esteemed editor, Dr. Bob Keim. He's been the editor JCO for almost 20 years now. So I'll turn things over to him.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I assume you can see my face at this point. Like Phil said, my name is Bob Keim. I've been on the editorial staff of the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics since 1982. We'll go into the history just a little bit, and you'll learn of the other editors. Been the editor-in-chief for almost 20 years, and it's certainly been the high point of my orthodontic career. I have deeply enjoyed it. I do have a PowerPoint here that I'd like to share with you. So let's see if I can get to that. Go back. Okay, so Phil, can you see that?
Your PowerPoint? Yes.
Okay. So, welcome to the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics. JCO, as it's known, the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics is known as JCO the world over. We are very much unique and proud of our uniqueness in the ortho world, and we will explore that just a little bit. The Journal of Clinical Orthodontics is a peer-reviewed medical journal. I've had questions coming from academics mostly about the status of our peer review, and we are fully peer-reviewed. I'll go into that process a little bit later in my presentation. The Journal of Clinical Orthodontics is focused on covering the practical aspects of orthodontics and practice management. Everything we publish has to be clinically relevant, either a direct clinical application or application to the management of an orthodontic practice. By way of history, the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics was established in 1967 by our highly esteemed founding editor, Dr. Eugene Gottlieb. Dr. Gottlieb was certainly one of my mentors and heroes as my career developed. He passed away a few years ago at the age of 99, still sharp as a whip and still writing. Just a true legend in orthodontics, and we are very proud to come from his lineage. When asked in an interview we did with Dr. Gottlieb a number of years ago, we asked him specifically about the history of the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics, and here's what he said. The idea for JCO started sometime in 1965 when I had a conversation with two orthodontist friends of mine, Leo Taft and Jerry Blafer. One of us, I don't remember which one, said in the course of the conversation, you know, there ought to be a journal by orthodontists about the everyday goings-on in an orthodontic offices. And we all agreed that was a good idea. The American Journal of Orthodontics had been around for quite a while at that time. Absolutely excellent journal, the finest orthodontic journal in the world. The Journal of the European Orthodontic Society was out, another absolutely excellent journal, and several others. What is unique to JCO is those journals focused very heavily on the science of orthodontics, and very respectably so. JCO was founded with the intent of looking at the actual day-to-day practice of orthodontics. It was intended for a readership of practicing orthodontics, while many of the others are targeted at a readership of orthodontic professors and academics. So it was established in 1967, actually published, here's volume 1, number 1 in September of 1967. The stated intent of this was to provide the specialty with a truly practical journal focused on the day-to-day practice of orthodontics, along with the business aspects of conducting a successful practice. Over the years, JCO has published interviews with most of what we'll call the big names in orthodontics. Charlie Tweed, down the line, Barents, McNamara, Vaden, Milson, quite a few, and quite a few of them are on our editorial board. But our very first journal had our very first interview with Dr. Raymond Begg. Dr. Gottlieb, we should mention, was a Begg practitioner, and that technique was carried early on in the JCO. Historically, Dr. Gottlieb founded the journal, first published in 1967, and he remained as the editor-in-chief for 21 years, from 1967 to 1988. Still very dynamic in writing at the time. He handed the editorship over to Dr. Larry White. It was interesting. I began my career as a general dentist out in southeastern New Mexico, my home state. And Dr. Larry White was the orthodontist to which I referred. Fabulous, fabulous orthodontics, just amazing, very dynamic kind of guy, very intelligent, widely read. And it wasn't till a number of years into our relationship of me as the general dentist referring to him as the orthodontist that I came to know that Larry was the editor of the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics. Not only were we professional colleagues, but we were friends. Larry was editor from 1988 to 2002 for a 14-year total run, at which time he resigned for reasons of his own. And he suggested to Dr. Gottlieb that I might be a good representative from the profession to edit this journal. I'd had a number of other editorial appointments in the past, going back to my junior high newspaper. So I filled in directly from Larry, and that was in 2002, and it has continued until the present date. Here's Dr. Gottlieb. Here's Dr. White. Relatively recent picture. Here am I. That's what I looked like almost 20 years ago when I accepted the editorship. You can see from my video that's projecting, I've got a lot more gray hair at the time and a lot less total hair altogether. But still, I'm here. Okay, getting back to our first journal. I found it interesting. Not only were we doing our first interview with Dr. Raymond Begg, but we were exploring this new and fascinating technology referred to as a rapid palatal expander, RPE, relatively new at the time. And following that was a story on how to control your practice. So right from the outset, we were doing things that were clinically relevant and dealt with the management of the orthodontic practice. When the journal was first published, this quote was from Dr. Gottlieb in the very first editor's corner. I want to read it directly. I should note that the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics, I'm sorry, I skipped this part, was founded, let's go back if we can. Yeah. As a Journal of Practical Orthodontics, the JPO. The name changed later, and we'll talk about that for a little bit. But the JPO is a Journal of Orthodontic Practice. It was conceived as a meeting place for orthodontists to share their knowledge and experience. While it will not neglect areas of basic information and philosophy of treatment, JPO will concentrate on the treatment of the orthodontic patient and the administration of the orthodontic office. Giving a continuing interest in the basic science of orthodontics, it is the sharpening and honing of techniques of treatment and administration that offer immediate rewards to the orthodontist and his patient in terms of treatment results accomplished in a better, easier, and quicker manner. Quality need not be sacrificed in the name of speed. Gadgetry need not be encouraged as a substitute for system. Communication and the maximum interchange of ideas mark the age in which we live. The more knowledge we have about how to do things, the less likely we are to try to solve all problems in the same manner with the same treatment. We can all learn from each other. Let JPO be a window to the orthodontic world today. Bring to this journal what you would care to share with your colleagues. Take from this journal what you need to treat the case better, to run your practice more smoothly, and to advance this wonderful specialty in which we serve. Written in 1967. Every word of that is just as valid today as it was back then. Okay. Again, here's some covers over the last few years. The Journal of Clinical Orthodontics is focused heavily, entirely on clinical orthodontics. There are no basic science articles present. A good colleague of mine a number of years ago, back when I was at the University of Tennessee, was Dr. Edward Harris. Dr. Harris was a physical anthropologist, but he devoted his career to study the human dentition and morphology and changes. And he knows more about orthodontics than many practicing orthodontists. And one time we were doing a journal review with our graduate students, and we came to the JCO. He said, well, you know, in this journal, I'm quoting from Dr. Harris here, says, you're not going to find a bunch of pin-headed rat studies. No, you will not find pin-headed rat studies in here. Everything that we publish has practical, clinical, or management focus in everything. That's one of our acceptance criteria, has to do with clinical applicability. It's interesting. I spent all of my career, I've been a professor of orthodontics, in addition to a practicing orthodontist. I began my career at the University of Tennessee. Then I spent the bulk of my career at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. This young man, he was young at the time, was one of my graduate students, and I always, as a personal gift to my graduating students, I would always give them, at my expense, not at the journal's expense, 1 year subscription to get them started reading the JCO. This young man, he's not that young anymore, but at the time when I did that, is Dr. Sage Humphreys from Laguna Niguel, California. I handed him his first copy, and he looked at it and he said, wow, that's the journal that I'll actually read. The implication is that the scientific journals, as noble as they are, spend more time on the shelf than they do in the reader's hands. Now, the actual title of this talk that we're doing today is called The Cutting Edge, but the cutting edge has been a regular feature of JCO for years and years. You see a variety of different aspects here that's done. Let's pursue that a little further. Our whole point of the cutting edge is that we try to bring to the profession clinical developments as soon as possible, as soon as they're deemed safe after preliminary research, to introduce these to practicing orthodontics, who in turn can implement them and deliver higher quality, more efficient quality care to their patients. And doing that over the years, we have published a number of firsts. One of them, of which we're very proud, was the concept of skeletal anchorage in this book by Dr. Thomas Creekmore and Dr. Michael Eklund in 1983. This was the first published account of using skeletal anchorage. Here's the picture of the late great Dr. Creekmore. Tragically died way too young in a plane crash, but he started using surgical screws. The first ones he implemented were put in just below the anterior nasal spine, with part extending into the oral cavity, where he ran heavy elastics from the implants up to the arch, and the whole point was to intrude the upper anterior segment and thereby opening a deep bite. This was the first use of skeletal anchorage, and we all know that as the years progressed, skeletal anchorage was come to be a mainstay of the profession in the form of mini screws, TADs, temporary anchorage devices. But the first publication was done in the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics. Also, orthognathic surgery has been around for a number of years, dating way back to Dr. Hugo Abelgeiser. I believe Abelgeiser was from Switzerland. I may be mistaken on that, but throughout the history of orthognathic surgery, it was usually, and the way I was taught to handle it, was to move the teeth first, setting the teeth in the proper space within their own arch. So you'd set the maxillary teeth in the proper space that you would anticipate within the maxillary alveolus, set the lower teeth in their proper space according to their space in the lower alveolus, and then the jaws themselves were resected and reset, as we're seeing on top here, to make the skeletal alignment correspond with the dental alignment. So this is the conventional approach where you do ortho first and then surgery. Of late, of the last 10 years, we've seen surgery first, followed by orthodontics, and it has a number of benefits to doing it that way. It's also a much quicker way of going about things. In other firsts, we have both firsts and reintroductions. A number of appliances have been addressed over the years, various forms of retainers, various fixed appliances and whatnot. But here are two functional appliances that existed for years before JCO was ever around, not used very much, but in the last half of the 20th century, these appliances were reintroduced first in Europe and then in the US, and used with tremendous success. And JCO was instrumental in making the American orthodontists aware of the unique benefits of doing these types of appliances. Now let me move this. Okay. We discussed the term peer review, or I brought it up at the beginning of this presentation. What difference does peer review make? Let's look at that in just a minute. First of all, let's talk about what it is. When you look it up in the Oxford Dictionary of Terms, as a noun, it means the evaluation of scientific, academic, or professional work by others working in the same field. We might say we submit our findings to rigorous peer review, or taken in its verb form, it's a subject, something, or someone to a peer review, to subject something or someone, a paper, to peer review, a peer-reviewed journal. What this means is before anything is published in a peer-reviewed journal, like the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics, the manuscript is first reviewed by the editor, then sent off for other colleagues, equals of the person who wrote it, to read it over, both for content and for format, and for them to criticize it. Is this worth publishing? Is this something new? Is this right? Is it wrong? This is peer review. Our reviewers then send us their opinions. Why is this not moving? There we go. And this is word-wise how it goes. Here's a good flow chart I found on the Wiley Publishing webpage. Almost all real scientific journals, clinical journals, this is the process that is done of peer review to ensure quality and integrity. An author will submit an article, and in just a minute we'll talk about how that's done at JCO. Then my assistant editor sort of picks through, and if there's some that are obviously flawed, I mean just poorly written or you can't see the illustrations, just something technical, she will look and do an initial triage. And this is the step. We have a very high rate of rejection. This is the step where more are rejected than anything else. This is me. I make the decision then as to which reviewers we send it to, and we have a panel of names that I keep as a big spreadsheet from orthodontists all over the world, and they are broken down by what they want to review, what types of papers, what subjects they want to review. And I will generally send each manuscript that I am considering for publication that has already passed my initial triage to at least 2 reviewers, sometimes more. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting some background noise there, but I'll just keep going. The reviewers will look at the paper, decide what revisions. They may say just no, just reject this. Okay, or do revisions. We send them back to the author for the paper to be revised. I'll look at it again and accept or reject. And this can go on for 2 or 3 cycles. I won't let it go on for more than 3 until I make this call right here. If I don't get at least 2 out of 3 of the reviewers saying to accept this, I will not accept it, and the manuscript is rejected. Once I finally accept it, usually based on the decisions of the reviewers, we will forward it then. It goes into production. Then it's actually printed and mailed. So that is our review process. Now, one question that frequently comes up is, how do I get published in the JCO? Bear in mind that most readers of journals are practitioners of the subject matter of the journals. So let's say a journal of geology, you'd have professional geologists writing geology papers and submitting them, and almost all of the authors are academics and they're used to writing every day. Now, bear in mind that our readership are clinical orthodontics, and they are businessmen and women in terms of running a practice. So all of our papers must have clinical or management applicability. Okay? We are not interested in themes, not interested in publishing. We may personally be interested in themes with purely academic interest, but it has to have interest to active practitioners of orthodontics. Okay, oops, I wasn't supposed to shift. There we go. So how to get published? Once you have an idea, you write a manuscript with a clinical topic. Most scientific journals have that format where you write an abstract and it has an outline and whatnot. We don't do that. That's for academics. We are not academics. Actually, I was for 50 years. But our readership are practitioners. So we're more interested in it being written as an article rather than a scientific paper. The idea that's central to the paper must be new or original or a big modification of existing idea. And excuse me, we do look for high quality illustrations. I probably reject more manuscripts with lousy illustrations for more than any other reason. If you go to the JCO website, that's where you submit it on web. All of our submissions are done over the web now. And once it's in, it goes through the review process we just discussed. Once you get the manuscript reviewed and revised and sent in, then we go to publication. This you will find in every issue of JCO and on the web page. And this is just a step-by-step instruction on how to submit and how the review process works. So basically, that's how we publish, why we publish. And let me open it up to any questions right now.
And we're going to handle questions via the chat, just for those of you who are here. If anyone has a question, go ahead and type it into the chat. It's just a lot easier than dealing with muting and unmuting. We just have a couple minutes left, so if anyone has a question, you can go ahead and put it in there. Just to comment on the submissions that you can find on the website, you can also find a very helpful guide that our assistant editor has put together to kind of help through the process. It's a PDF. There's a link to download it there on the website. For anyone watching this while we still have the AAO going on, you can also find that same guide in our booth. And I believe, Bob, you have a few times set up if anyone wants to talk with you one-on-one in our booth in a Zoom setting kind of like this about an article or anything like that. So anyone interested in that can go take a look. I'll also just put in a brief plug here for our practice study, which I saw that cover flash by at one point from a couple years ago. I think it was the 2017 practice study. The 2021 study is live right now on, we do it through SurveyMonkey, but the link is on our homepage to get into that. Let me just start by saying only U.S. orthodontists, please. Don't waste your time if you're not in the U.S. We will just throw out the response. So only if you're in the U.S. But if you are, we definitely need as many people as possible to fill out the study. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. We ask a lot of questions, and some of them involve data that you have to dig out of your practice management software. We do have the help of a few of those companies, and there's links to that in the survey and on our website about how to get that help. But we could use as many of you as possible in the United States to fill that out. And it's a great resource. It dates back to 1981. Done it every 2 years since then. So it's a great longitudinal study of orthodontics in the United States. And in the next month or so, as many of you could fill that out as possible, that'd be great. We have to get to Dr. Kazani, who is next. So I think we will close it there. So and thank you, Dr. Keim, for
very welcome. Let me say one last thing, Phil. If anybody has any questions about what I've said, or if you would like to run an idea by me, or if you would like to have some help writing a manuscript, those are all things I love to do. You can reach me at dr.bobkeim, BOBKEIM, @gmail.com. That's dr.bobkeim @gmail.com, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. So thank you and have a good day.